Hello everyone and welcome to this thought-provoking video. Now I do these every so often when I discover a problem or discuss something where I think it needs a discussion and to think about, and maybe we can advance on it in terms of the comments. So if you do have any feedback on this, do let me know in the comments. So as you know, I love GT7, I love playing Gran Turismo in general, and when I make these kind of videos, it's always to try and improve the game where I can. So way back, especially when GT7 first started, I talked about the wind in practice sessions, how it was a bit silly that one session you could have a tailwind and improve your time by half a second, and then next time you could have a headwind and then you could be 1 second down on your fastest lap because you have a headwind, and how it doesn't really make sense for a qualifying session that your opponent can have a much favorable more wind just by resetting the session, and therefore they can get a quick time. Well, we're sort of down that environment again, and I realize that when you do wet races, or when they do wet races, you can keep exiting and starting again until you get a dry session, even though it's a wet race, and therefore get a really quick time on the leaderboards, and therefore start in pole position or towards the front. But that is a wet session that could go dry. And again, you know, if you're doing a qualifying session, that can happen. I do get that bit. However, I do think it should be static. And the reason I say this is because did you know that in a dry session, their sessions can also change as well? Even though it's a dry session, you'll see slight changes in light. Well, it actually changes a whole lot more as well. Let me explain. And I noticed this quite a way back. So when I was doing Beat the Meta in the 4GT race car at Watkins Glen, is where I really noticed this. So when you do laps and you're doing laps and you're doing laps and you're like, okay, I'm improving, and you've done so many laps, and then suddenly you jump into a session and you're like, well, the car's now understeering more, or I seem to be slower than I was, and I don't understand why. It makes no sense whatsoever. You could be 2, 3, 4 tenths of a second slower. Well, I got that feeling in the 4GT. Now, I just want to put a caveat in there. Tire temperatures aren't impacted the second you start a session. So if you hit start, you go, the tires are up to optimum. And the best way to describe this is when you go into the pits and change tires, when you come out the pit, you are incredibly slower. Now, we saw this at Sardinia Layout C in reverse, where you came out the pits. You didn't necessarily get the undercut because that first lap was, it's quite a hard lap to get up to speed. Then you got a bit quicker, and it was a third lap because it's such a short lap where the tires then were up to temperature. When you do the time trial, of course, you normally can go straight in and off you go. Some people have been saying, oh, you can't do that. Trust me, you can. The tire temperature thing is not a thing by just hitting retry and go. So please don't keep that in your back of your mind that is an issue. Definitely not an issue there from what I can see anyway. But what is an issue is actually the session overall. Now, we're going to jump to the 4GT first, because what I did is I saved the gameplay at the time because I did report this initially to PD, but now I've got more evidence than ever that this is an actual problem. So let's jump to that footage now. So here we are then at Watkins Glen, racing around in Sector 1. If you're not used to this Sector 1, it's basically one corner, then flat out all the way to the end here. And you can see there, I've got a 27.534, and you can see it there, I'm at 164 miles an hour, just as I click to 164 here. So it's after the 500 board, we're approaching the 400 board. You can see it there on a 27.534. Now, at the time, I was looking for 0.4s in Sector 1 because that's what I was used to from all the other time trial sessions I had done here. And as we continue round, we can see that at 27.4 then on this particular lap as we go through the right-hander. So I just want to keep that in mind. I was after 0.4s and 0.5s initially as we head towards the line. And what's this going to be time-wise? It's a 43.8. Now, you can see my lap records are 43.3 there down in the bottom right. So we're going to fast forward again here, and we're going to go all the way up here to where we just click over 164. And you can see here, it's again after the 500 board. We're approaching that 400 board, and the time now is a 27.454. So I'm getting those 0.4s, 0.5s, what I was used to. However, I was feeling like, why am I half a second off is what I was concerned about at the time when I was doing this. So I'm going to come through here, and what I'm actually going to do in a moment's time is I'm going to reset. So you exit, not retry, you exit, and you can see there I've got 296 miles, so I do know this car, it's all this car. You exit and then hit start again, and that changes the session. You can see this with the clouds in the sky, in fact. So what we're going to do again, because I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just retry this, because it was in the back of my mind that this was a problem. And again, we're going to advance towards the end here. I got 27.4 in Sector 1, which is, you know, what I expected, and a 43.6. But you can see I'm still off my lap record, and I was like, what am I doing wrong here? I don't quite understand what I'm doing wrong. Again, we're going to do the same thing here, fast forward all the way, And let's see what we're going to get here in terms of when we get to 164. And we're just going to retry, actually, because we're miles off there. You can see that. Miles off. It was a 0.5 there. So we're going to hit exit, and we're going to hit start again. So we're not really changing anything here. I'm just trying to get going. Again, the clouds have changed there. You can see that up ahead. And we're going to kick off into a lap now. So I'm showing you this whole process because I'm trying to show you that I'm not doing anything to change this. All I'm doing is exiting and starting. And I want you to notice now, I've hit 164 at the 600 board. The 600 board. Bearing in mind, we didn't even see the 500 board when we hit 164. Now I'm seeing it just before the 600 board. And the 27.356 there in sector 1. 2 tenths on that 0.5. 2 tenths. 1 tenth on the 0.4, obviously. There's only one corner in there. You think, okay, maybe it's a lucky corner. You know, you might think that and go, oh, yeah, Tidge. Lucky corner. That's what it was. Let's advance towards the end of the lap then. You see it's still a 27.356 down at the bottom. And we instantly improved there on our lap. Instantly. Okay, so we're like, okay, well, let's go again. You know, it might have been a lucky lap. You know, so we're going to continue on out of there. We are up on the time. It's a nice sector. Corner 1, sorry. We didn't use all the track there either, and we're still up on the time here. So we are going to prove this from the 27.356, I think it was. That is obviously going to come down a little bit more. We're going to have a look at where we tick over to 164 miles an hour as well as we continue towards that moment now. There we go. Once again, we are before the 600 board. You see that another 0.3. So now you're probably going, maybe you got lucky twice. Could be the case. Could be the case. You know, I could get lucky twice. Maybe the session is exactly the same. I'm making this video for a reason, folks. Trust me. So we're going to carry on with this lap. In fact, what we will do is it will advance it towards the end in a moment's time. And this is what we do. And I'm doing a continuous play here just to prove this point. So we crossed the line. Look, I've improved again. My record has improved there straight away. And we got a 0.8 and a 0.6 earlier. We've gone into a new session now. And look at this. So continue on through here. We use a bit more of the track there, I think, just maybe. And look at this. We're up on the time again. It's a funny old situation, this. Let's see what that Sector 1 time is when we get there. And we're actually going to stop it at 164 miles an hour and see what we're doing there in terms of pace. But that was a good corner 1 as well, to be fair. And as we get towards the 164 marker, oh, look. We're even further back than the 600 board. Remember, where that Supra Ghost is now was probably about where we were hitting 164 on the other times. And now we're in the 0.2s. Yes, I was stunned when I started seeing 0.2s. I was like, I've not even seen these doing these laps before. And now suddenly I can get them. And when I started carrying on doing this, trying to do beat the meta, I was getting 0.2s a lot when I found the right session. Because I started judging it based on the speed at the end of the straight. Look at this, the end of the lap. Here we go. Look, we've improved again to a 0.176. So I'd spent hours before not being able to beat the 0.3, and then suddenly a change of session, and I can instantly beat my record 3 times. And once again, 164 before the 600. So there you can see it's session related. Now, I hate having my time wasted. I absolutely hate, I despise it actually in terms of this kind of mechanic, because what's the point? It loses the fun instantly. And I can tell you now, I did lose a bit of fun from doing this. Just to prove a point here, session 1, session 2, session 3 there for you. And look at the difference. In session 3, we had the best sector there at the very end. There's the worst sector, obviously, because I just come from session 2, so I was getting used to it. You can see the differences. And then the 400 boards are showing there in session 1 and 2. Session 2, arguably even slower there, but you know, we catch up in terms of the speed, it looks like there. But you can see there is a fundamental difference and a fundamental problem. You can see that there with that screenshot. The fact that I'd wasted an hour beforehand, and I did waste an hour beforehand, I would say, and I'm using the word wasted here for a reason, trying to beat the 0.3 when all I had to do was keep restarting and find the best session. Which there's no indication as to what is the best session, because I kept trying after that to figure out, is there something that you can look at to identify to get the best session? This was a problem for me. This is a huge problem because it takes the fun out of doing time trials. I like doing time trials. Now, obviously, the time trial guides, they all use a performance mode where the wind is set to 0, and I assume the temperature stays the same. I've not seen any massive differences there when doing that, but I've not repeated them over and over again. Do let me know in the comments if you have felt that difference and it's something I can look at in the future. But for the daily races, that is a problem, because you are looking at basically the leaderboards and going, well, did they have a better session than me, or are they just faster than me? You've no idea, and that determines the grid and then your placement. So when I was doing beat the meta, of course, I wasted an hour doing that, and then suddenly I improved, and suddenly I go up the grid, and then I've got a better chance of doing beat the meta. Absolutely frustrating. But I left it there, and I did tell PD at the time, and that's it. I just left it. And then it happened again, didn't it? It happened again where we really, really didn't want it. Let's jump to a more recent one in the Porsche. So with the Porsche, we're at Tidgney Layout C in reverse. Now, as you know, or may not know, the times were ridiculously close here in the Porsche. Ridiculously close. Like, you gain 1/10 of a second, you're jumping up the rankings by a substantial amount. So any tiny difference in the session is going to have a major, major impact. Now, that 50.974 that I've got there on that right-hand side, I got that on my 3rd lap of the time trial. 3rd lap. So you're thinking, oh, that should be easily beatable when you do it, shouldn't you? Yeah, that's what I thought as well. But I spent a good few hours trying to beat it, and I couldn't do it. So I was getting actually kind of frustrated at this point in time. I really was. Now, I could only see a 0.5 as my best there that you see down in that bottom section there for Sector 1. That was my best, really, in the Porsche. I had seen a Porsche get a 50.7 before, but again, you could adjust suspension, so there was a chance that that was a suspension change. So I didn't really read too much into that. You can see there at 51.086. Now, I kept trying to push and push and push, and I only really could see it 51.0. And I was like, how did I get a 50.974 on my basically first try of asking to do a time trial? And then suddenly, I'm stuck here. Well, we go on to this next lap then. Let's have a look at this one as we go into the braking zone. And you can see we're slowing it down nicely. First gear, accelerating out in first gear. I have talked about usage of the Ghost before, and I was using that to judge as well accordingly as we continue on up here. But, you know, you build up the muscle memory to an extent where the Ghost actually becomes a bit useless. Going up here, I was monitoring the speeds of 140 versus 141. You see that at 0.489. And that was getting to the point where I was pretty much at my limits at that point. I really was. That's like ultra limit. Couldn't really go much faster. And again, I was still struggling to see how can I get below that 50.974. I did that after 3 laps. I should be able to improve on this by at least a 10th quite easily. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't see it. I didn't understand why or how I'd done this amazing lap and then could not beat it at all in the slightest. What's this going to be? At 50.994. You see, I'm struggling here and I'm getting to my limits. And I'm like, well, what's going on? Well, yeah, that's the question. What is going on? So again, at 51.037 here. I think had I changed the session here? I can't remember exactly. Coming through here, we accelerate out of the corner and continue on, and I'm on the grass. So no, I hadn't changed the session by this moment in time. So now I'm going to exit. So yes, this is where we're up to. Going to exit and we're going to hit start. And let's go then. We're going to try this once again, boys and girls. We're going to try this. So you see in there, I was getting 51.0s essentially. High 0.4 on Sector 1 was my highest. But really, we're looking to try and get, you know, that extra 10th there. So let's see what happens here. We've exited. We're starting again. All of the other times you've seen were on the previous session. This is the first time I've exited and started the session. So we're going to head towards turn 1. Then following this Ghost, let's see what happens here. I want you to pay attention actually to the exit of turn 1, because this is one thing I did notice here. Going through this right-hander, we accelerate out and notice how stable it was. The end of the last session there was very oversteery. This one, not quite as oversteery. It's significantness, I promise you, it's very significant as we go up here. 141, easily 141 there. More in the 141s than the other. 0.42, I instantly got my best ever sector with a reset. That was my best ever Sector 1. Apart from, I don't know what the 50.974 was because I wasn't paying attention at the time because it was my 3rd lap. But that was my very best sector in Sector 1. And I've actually improved on that as well during future sessions when I was trying to do Beat the Meta in this Porsche 911. If you've not seen that video, do check it out after this one. It's a really good Beat the Meta. Anyway, we're going to head towards the line. And what we're going to do here then, what do you know? Oh, look, we improved by nearly a 10th. On a lap time, which is so significant, a 10th is absolutely insane. And it was unbelievable. You know, a couple of laps later, look, 0.9s. I'm getting them 0.9s for days. Absolute days. I ended up in a 0.8s in the end, in terms of this time trial. 0.8. And yet, I was struggling to even break into the 50s because of the session. Right, what we're going to do then is go into 4 sessions. So I did 3 laps in each of these sessions. And what we're going to do is just look at what are the differences in these sessions. So top left, it's quite dark. For whatever reason, lots of cloud cover there. Top right, bit brighter. In fact, I'd argue probably the brightest. Bottom left and bottom right, they look very similar, to be honest with you. As we leave this corner then, let's have a look at some of these speeds. And, okay, well, this is nice and easy, isn't it? Left-hand side, they're all at 89. On the right, they're all at 90. So we stopped at the exact same point in each of the laps. You can see that with the time. Obviously, depending on how you do the corner, it's going to be where you are in terms of speed on exit. Now, with this, I took the fastest sector from each of the sessions. I said I did it 3 times. These are the fastest of them. So the right-hand side was faster than the left-hand side. And what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at it at the top of the mountain. Okay, as we go up here then. Any speed differences there? The bottom left looks quite quick, actually, as we stop it here. And looking at that, the interesting one is down at the bottom right-hand side, where it's 140, and the rest are all 141. Now, if you remember, at the exit of turn 1, bottom right was one of the quicker ones. The right-hand side was the quickest. So it'll be interesting to see how this ends up in terms of sector times, that is for sure. We continue on then towards the end of the sector, and we can see different lines being taken there. They all end up at 142, but critically there, bottom right is not the quickest. Top right is actually the quickest there with the 0.493. Bottom left, actually, you can see the slowest. It was slowest out of turn 1, slowest at the sector as well. 0.55 there, which is significant. It is significant. It shows that that session is probably slower than the rest. It really does. And top right being the quickest at the time. Now, obviously, little differences could have happened there. I could have done the corner slightly wrong. I did only give it 3 attempts. But I'm hoping what I showed you before in terms of what happened with the 4GT and the Porsche restarting the session and instantly going quicker has demonstrated there is a fundamental problem there. And I'll explain that fundamental problem in terms of the lobby. Oh, sorry, not lobby, leaderboard. I've named it lobby leaderboard. And you can see here, look how close these times are. So if you improve by a 10th because the session's any better, it's significant. And as you go down that leaderboard, it gets closer and closer and closer. And it will always continue to get closer. Look at all these in the 0.6s. Imagine if they had a better session, got a 0.5 suddenly. It'll get closer and closer and closer. And the lower down the leaderboard, the more people are in that area. The 0.7s are filled with people here. Filled. Look at this. We're still in the 0.7s. Then we go to the 0.8s. And I ended up in the 0.8s eventually there. But when I did this test, I was on a 0.908. And that's the point I'm trying to put across here. Now, how do you solve this? Well, for me, there are 2 ways to solve this. Number 1, you don't use the practice times anymore. They're there just for a practice. Like they should be, really. And what really we should do then is qualify in the daily race. Now, I know a lot of people would quite like that because guess what? Qualify in the daily race and it's where you are in the race at that time, and everybody has the same session settings. I would actually prefer that, to be honest with you. It actually helped beat the meta as well, but that's just me on my own. But I actually do think that would be better in terms of the racing. The other thing they could do is actually put the equal mode on that is available to them. That is available in the lobbies. It's how I do the bot test, and equal conditions mode. And that would solve the problem. But I believe, don't quote me on this, that whatever settings are for the race, they have to use in the qualified time trial, which seems really weird to me. I've got to be honest. That's a really weird game design, that 2 separate sessions are linked and can't be unlinked. Problem maybe? I don't know. It seems very weird to me, and I would, out of the 2 choices, I'd rather have qualifying in the daily race. If they don't want to do that, they need to sort out this, in my opinion. It is a problem, and I would argue it definitely needs solving, in my opinion. Do let me know your opinion, though, in the comments, because I do appreciate and I do love reading your opinions. I can be wrong. You can have a different opinion to me. I don't mind. Just put it in the comments. Just don't go raging, calling people names. That's all I ask. Feedback, constructive criticism, whatever you like. I love reading in the comments, and we can have a good discussion. That's the point, and then we get a better outcome. And that's what I said at the very start of this video. I just want Gran Turismo 7 and Gran Turismo as a whole to be the best it can be. Speaking of which, that is it for me then, folks. And for the channel, I do hope you have liked this. So if you have and you want to support the channel, give it a subscription. Do subscribe to the channel. We are on the journey to 40k, and we get closer by the day. Give it a like as well on the way out. That really is appreciated. 2 videos to check out there as well if you are interested in further content. But a big thank you from me, and I hope to see you in another video or live stream again very soon.